Namaste, bitches. Navonod on No Limit Hold'em here. Wanted to try something a little bit different. This isn't exactly my idea, and I actually think this is long overdue. I think I should have been doing videos like this every once in a while. I wasn't sure how my audience would respond, but I'm getting actually people telling me how they respond, that they want to see this. So I played some heads-up games. I've been running my bankroll, my little run it up from nothing uh, bankroll up a little bit at a time, and I've been playing up to NL25 again. Um, for those of you who don't know, I've ran my bankroll to $500, cashed it out, played on nothing but frequent player points, got it back up to 500, cashed it out. I did that twice. This is my third iteration, and I'm actually making a run at it. So I think this was an NL10 heads-up game, and this was the second game I played against this particular villain. But what I want to do is I want to show you some of the concepts that I talk about often in my strategy videos, um, and in real game. You know, like so you can see sort of real-world application. So this is game 2 against a player that we don't have a lot of reads on. We only played a quick game with him. If I remember correctly, it was only, like, it finished in the first blind round. And I think I was just value owning him, and he seemed to be kind of your run-of-the-mill tight, loose passive. So here we go. We're going to get into this against kind of a station type player. Okay, so this is one of the games that I played that I think is worth watching. I think that there's a lot of spots that were pretty standard that came up, so we can just like move right from the conceptual stuff into application. So 10-6 suited, heads up. We're at NL10, I think. Yeah, NL10. So what do we do here? We open. I don't think that should be any big shocker. And okay, so now this is a spot where villain's going to check to us. What should we do with this hand? So we look at the hand. We look at our hand. We look at the board. We think about villain's range, and then we try to figure out, like, do we have a hand that if we bet, we can get called not just on the flop but across multiple streets and have the best hand. Like, we can get called here by 5x and some draws, but how often are we going to want to bet multiple streets? You know, like 3 streets, almost never without improving. So this is a hand that's going to play very well in our check back range, because we can, if we bet, we're not going to get called by very many second best hands. We're not going to get any better hands to fold. We don't need to start building a pot right now. So by checking back instead of betting, we, first of all, we rep a worse range, like we kind of under rep our second pair in his eyes, hopefully. So it gets us 1 street closer to showdown, which isn't the worst thing that ever happened to 10-6 on this board. And it's also kind of helpful that we don't have to worry so much about a diamond coming off, because we block diamonds, so it's less likely he's got 2 diamonds, and we also have a backdoor flush draw that isn't that bad of a backdoor flush draw. So if we, for instance, induce a bluff or induce a semi-bluff if a diamond comes off, it's unlikely they're going to get there, and even if they do, we're not going to have to fold. Or even if they just bluff something else in the third. So, I mean, that's not a big deal, but having the 3 diamonds here can be helpful. So I think we should check back. No matter how we want to frame our hand out, it's like, do we have the ace, the king, or the queen? We have something like a king. We have something like a bluff catcher showdown value that we should want to get to the next street, induce a bluff and call it. Or induce lighter call downs. Like if he checks again on most turns, we're going to start value betting. He bets, and we just call, and it's fine. You know, it's fine. It's like, it's a small bet. We probably would have preferred if he just bet half pot. But that little blocking bet, it does kind of smell like a 5 doing something goofy. So this is not our favorite card. on the river. So what are we going to do here? Well, if he checks, I think we've got a tough decision, but when he bets, it's like just a pretty obvious call. We have to call. Okay, so ace jack he raises. We can 3-bet and get called by worse. He's going to call us with worse aces. He's going to call us with worse jacks. Like, he's not folding queen jack, king jack, ace 10, ace 5 suited probably. So we dominate a lot of his calling range, which is a really good reason to 3-bet. Like, we can raise for value, get called by not just like hands that are technically worse, we can get called by hands that we crush. So building a pot in such a situation is generally a good idea. But now what do we do? We've got club, club, club. We don't have one. So what kind of hand do we have? Well, we've got a value hand. We can definitely get called by many second best hands, including any hand that has a club in it. But we are out of position. So checking, expecting him, like if we know our opponent will bet all of their flush draws, then that makes us more want to check and call. And if we know that our opponent will raise their flush draws some of the time, but we're not sure with what frequency, that's another reason not to bet and get raised and put into a really tough spot. But if we think our opponent is probably going to be more prone to making calling mistakes than betting for value here, it's probably a good idea. And I like a thicker bet, like a big hearty bet here, because we might not be going for multiple streets of value. Like if a club comes here, so it's like there's a lot of reasons to go for a bigger bet on a real volatile board like this. There's so many hands that he can have that will call, because we do value, like we do get something out of folding his equity out. Like if he has some kind of a shitty club in his hand, he's got a pretty reasonable chance of actually winning the pot, which we don't want to just let him win, you know. So there's some value in that, but mainly there's a lot of clubs that we can get value from. And if our opponent has a second best hand, like 9x or worse ace x, he can put us on a semi-bluff, which is another reason to go bigger. And because on a lot of runouts, we're not going to have a second chance to pull money out of this pot. So we really don't benefit that much from keeping his range wide and weak. We'd rather just kind of, like, if we could exactly get called here by an ace, but then like almost no matter what we bet, he's going to call us with an ace. But if he's never going to put another dime in, then we want to get that value now, right? So for a lot of reasons, but basically you could just say we have a value hand, we expect our opponent to make more calling mistakes than other types of mistakes, and the board texture is like very scary, wet, textured, volatile, dynamic. So let's get the value now while our hand is still a value hand. So the 3 is a brick. I think we should go once more for value. But now a lot of the hands that we were getting value from are no longer in his range. Like he's not, or won't be in his calling range. He can't call us with a busted flush draw, for instance. And he might well bet with a lot of bluffs here, thinking that maybe we airballed some kind of flush draw, or we're otherwise bluffing ourselves. So I think that it's likely that our opponent's going to make more betting than calling mistakes here. So checking, planning to call, I think is the right play. And if he checks back, it kind of sucks. It's unfortunate. It's just one of the problems with being out of position. If he checks back some kind of a hand that would have bet, but he does make a bet with the same exact hand we have, which I don't blame him. If I was in position, I also would have made a bet, and I kind of like his bet sizing. But, we call, and it's a chop, and that's fine. Okay, so we raise pre-flop with 6-4 suited, of course. And then we catch this queen 8-7 two-tone And we have the gut shot. Five. We have gut shot plus backdoor flush draw. What do we do? Well, we have 6 high. So if he folds 9 high, that's a slam dunk victory for us. But we have a gut shot. So even if he calls with 2 pair, we're not dead. So the combination of having a lot of better hands that can fold and equity against even the strongest hands in his range make this a very good bet, a very good bluff, a very thick bluff. The other nice thing is we will pick up some turns that we can double barrel. We do have still equity. Like we still have equity when we get called here, and if the king of whatever comes off, we can barrel, especially if it's the king of diamonds, because it's unlikely he's calling with a backdoor draw. So it's not like we have to worry so much about our flush draw being dominated. So then we'd have a gut shot plus a flush draw, plus an overcard that turns most of his top pairs into second pairs, turns his second pairs into third pairs, and his third pairs into fourth pairs. So it's a good hand to bet, planning to barrel a lot, or not a lot, but a decent amount. And sticking with this like 60 into 80, like 3/4 pot bet on a volatile board seems like the right idea. For pretty much all the reasons that we already talked about. Okay, so one thing I tell my students all the time is that your opponent may well be balanced when he develops a limping range, but when he's been raising, when you've been playing against him and he's not limped, his first limp is it's not likely to be balanced. Like, if he picked up a hand, he's like, man, I don't really want to raise, I don't really want to fold, I can limp for 3-1. And he's like, yeah, but then he can attack my limps. His next thought would be something like, yeah, but if he starts attacking my limps, I can just start limping big hands. Well, fine. But, maybe he will be balanced, but he's not balanced yet. So attack these. Attack the first limp. Attack it relentlessly. It gets through so often. It's like free money. I mean, it's not like you're dead if you get called, And honestly, you could even be ahead of some of his limp calls with a queen high. And dominate a few, like queen 2 suited or 7-6 suited. 7-6 offsuit, more likely, I guess. Okay, now this time he limped again, and we raised, but we're not raising to steal, we're raising for value. So that just timed out really well. And then we hit this board. So, like, whose range benefits from this board most? Like, how do we frame our hand here? Like, think about the distribution of hands that are going to limp and call. Look at our hand. How many better hands will we have on this board? How many worse hands will we have on this board? And more than anything, if we bet, do we think he's going to make a lot of mistakes against a bet? And if we check, will he make a lot of mistakes against a check? Like, that's the heart, right? Like, if we can get him to bet some worse hand than ace high, and we call it, then that's us making money. But if we bet and he calls with better or folds worse, it's really not. I mean, you're making money in one sense, but in another sense, you're not really. Like, that's not how you beat somebody at poker. You have to beat them by making less mistakes than they make. So we check, and we would have had like 2 overcards, an ace high, 3 clubs to like backdoor nut flush draw. So we were checking to call. We weren't going to check and fold. But I think on the flop, our hand was just a little bit too strong to bluff with, not strong enough to bet for value, because he's not going to make many mistakes against a bet. He's not going to fold a pair. He's not going to call with some no pair hand that's not a draw. And even if he calls with a 6 here, you could say he's making a mistake against us, like he's putting money in with a worse hand when we're an equity favorite. But we're out of position with no pair, no draw on the flop. If he's got a draw and position, it's pretty unlikely we're going to win the pot. So even if we do put money in where he's a dog on this street, it's not so much about being a dog on this street. The reasons that I think you really only need to look at 2 reasons for betting. I think that you can just put all of the bets that you ever want to make into one of two categories, and if it doesn't fit into one of these categories, you shouldn't bet. You should bet hoping to get your opponent to fold their equity out when you have a reasonable chance of doing so, and it benefits you to do so. So like, especially when you can get them to fold more equity than you have. And you should bet hoping to build a pot when you're a favorite to win that pot. And this is for heads up. You don't necessarily have to be a favorite to win the pot when you're not heads up. You can just say when you're pulling more than your fair share of that money back out of the pot. But heads up, you can keep it simple. In any heads up pot you're playing, you can bet hoping to fold out your opponent's equity immediately, or hoping to build a pot when you're a favorite to win the pot. Now, if we bet and he's got a draw, we are not a favorite to win that pot. So we're basically building his pot for him. And so you could say, well, I'm value betting against his draws. No, you're not value betting against his draws. You're putting more money into a pot than when he's a favorite to win the pot. That's how I would look at it. So now we hit the ace, and he checked back here. What's our play? This is probably the most obvious of our decision points so far. It went check, check. The ace comes. He's going to have some aces. You know, like when he checks back here, he's going to have some aces. He's going to have some draws. He's going to have some like flush draws. He's going to have some straight draws. He's going to have some bottom pairs, pocket pairs. I mean, he took a weird line in terms of how he played pre-flop and on the flop, but still, he can make plenty of mistakes against our bet. He can call with many second-best hands, and we're not in such a disastrous situation against his draws anymore. Like, if we're betting against a flush draw or a straight draw, we do want to build that pot. We're going to win the pot more than our fair share. Like, if we bet and he calls, he's not going to reclaim like his amount of money back out of that pot. We're winning, and it doesn't even matter if he reclaims his fair share or not. What really matters is that if we're going to put in some amount of money as kind of a value bet, then we just want to know that we're going to win the pot more than half the time when we're against exactly one opponent. And with top pair and a good kicker, there's just no doubt in my mind that's the case. And that is a thick value bet. Not too many other things to do there. The queen comes off. Does this change anything? His draw is bricked, so we can consider checking, hoping to induce a bluff. And I think that would make some sense. But my read on this player, this is the second time I played against him, was just that he's going to make more calling mistakes than folding or than aggressive mistakes. So we went ahead and bet, but you know, sometimes they just fold. Okay, so we've just got like this pocket sixes on king 10-3 two-tone. He checked, and we're just allowed to check back, and I think that we just have a showdown value hand. If we bet, he's not going to fold anything better. He's not going to call us with too many worse hands. We're not going to be a big favorite against a draw. Yeah, we're in position now, but like he's got, you know, most of his draws will have at least an overcard, and they have like plenty of outs, and we can't stand up to aggression. So like if we bet into a draw here on the flop, I mean, if we bet into a draw and he check raises, we're going to have to fold. So we can't really think that we're value betting against a draw if he's going to check raise us off of the hand every time he has a draw, which I don't think he's going to literally every time. But also if he has two overcards, or if he has some kind of like straight flush draw, combo draw, pair plus draw, we're not a favorite. And we're certainly, I mean, we may not even be an equity favorite. We're certainly not a favorite to win the hand. You know, he's got he can bluff more effectively than we can value bet when we're ahead. Like pocket sixes just never really knows where it's at, and his draws do. So he's going to just make fewer mistakes and play better and win more often than we're going to. So even if we knew he had a draw, then we still might not want to bet. You know, I mean, if we knew he had a draw, then we'd bet as long as we could retain the knowledge. But We wouldn't want to bet against a range that contains draws just because it contains draws, because even when he does have a draw, it's not that good for us. Certainly when he has a 10, it's not that good for us, or a 6, or a king, it's not that good for us. And if he has a 3, maybe he would have called us once, but on balance, this is like the just most obvious check back on the flop imaginable, and the turn, it gets a little bit dicier because he checked again. So if he does have some kind of a draw, now this is our last chance to get value out of the draw. He already had a chance to bluff and he didn't take it, so I'm not as worried about getting check raised. And I think that he's going to have enough good second best hands, like 3x and 2x and ace high, that will give us action. And if he has a draw, it's looking like he's more of the check call with his draws type because he didn't lead the turn. So for all of those reasons, and also because then no matter what the river card comes, when we bet the turn, he's likely to check to us on the river. So like if we had checked back on the turn, and then he'd led the river, we're probably going to have to put this 40 in anyway. So we may as well just bet now when we can still get value from the like random hearts in his hand, 3x, 2x, ace highs, that will call but won't bet. And also this way, for all the times the heart comes, we get him checking to us on the river, most likely. So I think for all those reasons we can bet. Oh, and also, just him having like 2 live overcards, we have no real reason to free roll his overcards. Like, so he checked twice. We should just bet and take the pot. If he's got like Jack 9, he's going to fold that. And while that's not like a huge slam dunk, that is 6 outs. And we are going to have a hard time calling a bluff on the river. So why free roll him to just hitting those outs when... And also, he's not really shown that he's prone to bluffing. Like, if he was going to bluff at Jack 9, he was probably going to do it on the turn. So if he has a Jack 9, for instance, or any 2 overcards, there's just no sense in free rolling his equity and giving him a free shot at 6 outs if there's nothing good that comes of it. Like, free rolling somebody's equity when they would otherwise fold is a fundamental theorem of poker mistake. It's one that I recommend making very often because usually you can get bigger mistakes in return. But if he's not going to make any mistakes on his, he's not going to make any mistakes himself. There's no reason to just, free roll him. But you could make an argument for checking the turn also. I don't think it would have been a bad idea. That was probably the closest decision point in this entire match. So yeah, I think we're probably going to have to do this in at least 2 parts. I was thinking we'd do it in 2 parts, but I don't know that we'll get done with this in 2 parts because maybe if I start speeding it up a little bit. Like, we just have, okay, so what are we going to do here? We raise, he calls. Like, what do we have? Do we have showdown value, or air? Showdown value, or bluff, really. Well, we've got a bluff. And also the fact that we will pick up equity on turns, I think also makes it a little bit more plus EV to just go for the bluff instead of shutting down. Like, especially when we don't have a good diamond draw. Like, the times when we pick up a diamond draw, it's not going to be a great diamond draw. So for that reason, among other reasons, I think betting is better than checking back. We want to be able to use the equity that we have to the best of our advantage, and I think we do that by being aggressive here, not by checking and inducing bluffs that we're going to have a hard time calling, but rather betting and getting calls from hands that will probably, if he does call, check to us on the turn, and then we can decide if we want to check back and just take our equity or double barrel, probably depending on how scary the card is for what we expect his calling range to be on the flop. Hopefully that made some sense. Some semblance of sense. Okay. As predicted, I'm pretty good at predicting what I did in past. Like, that would have been a card I probably would have double barreled. Although it's close. It is close. Because actually so many of his hands would have also improved. Okay, so I think we can probably open fold this. 10-6 offsuit and 10-5 suited is where I'm probably going to draw the line between open folding and open raising. So my 10X's, I want 10-6 offsuit or 10-5 suited against most players, most of the time, at most stack depths. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to get a little bit of more like practical application stuff out. Tell me what you thought about this video. I'd love to hear about it in the comment section, and let me know if you'd like to see more of this particular match or more videos like this in future. I'd really like to get your input, guys, on what you thought about this video format. It goes so fast. Can't believe I got just to the 4-minute mark, and it took 25 minutes of explaining. So let me know what you thought. Maybe I can pick up the pace. Comments below, please. Until next time, good quote LUCK end quote. Namaste, bitches.